On this week's episode, John wonders if the 51.8 is a gimmick or if there's more to it, and Alan returns to the show to discuss a really interesting follow-up question regarding attribution. What if your photo gets published but you don't want attribution? This is Tips from the Top Floor, episode 793 for Thursday, October the 6th, 2017.
Tips from the top floor, tips from the top, alright, from the top floor.
Hey, hello, welcome. This is Chris Marquardt, your hopefully weekly photography show. I appreciate if you listen every week, and I promise I keep doing this as long as I can, and as long as you keep listening. Let's see. I have been in Tuscany on a vacation, which happens rarely enough. And there is an interesting photographic angle to that, because last year, before the season, like in end of March, I think, Monica and I went to Tuscany, and we had our cameras with us, and it was, well, not quite perfect in terms of the weather. It was rainy and windy. I still got some photos that captured that really well. But of course, what I consider Tuscany is more evening sun, beautiful alleyways, old villages, medieval villages, and all that stuff that you connect with that. And we did get that kind of weather this year. But this was a vacation that I took not just with Monica, but I took my parents, and we invited them there because we rarely do these things, and it was about time to do that. So I decided, and Monica decided during packing pretty much, that, you know what, let's leave the cameras at home. And I did that because I didn't want to be that guy, it's taking another half hour here. I just wanted to really give that time to my parents, and it was the right decision. But it was also a hard decision, and we had so many beautiful opportunities this time, and I kind of regret to not have the camera with me. But then, of course, I did take photos this time with my old in air quotes 2-year-old iPhone 6s, and it turned out this was a good grounding experience again, because you don't have zoom, at least on that camera you don't, and digital zoom doesn't count. So I had to use sneaker zoom. I was kind of locked into that slight wide angle that it has. But another good thing, and that's a grounding experience. That's something that kind of brings you back to the roots and helps you improve as a photographer. Now, it's also inconspicuous. Everyone has smartphones these days. People won't notice you. They will just ignore you. Whereas with a big DSLR, it's a bit harder to not be seen. So I enjoyed that, really. I did really enjoy that, even though the photos from a technical point of view might not be exactly the way that I always want them to be. But hey, they are certainly good enough. If you're on Facebook, you might have seen some of those photos on my Facebook account. One thing I noticed is I saw a lot of entry-level DSLRs with kit lenses. More than in other places. I don't know why that was. Maybe it's an Italian thing. But it was really noticeable that people had entry-level DSLRs with them. Didn't see as many Micro Four Thirds cameras, mirrorless cameras. So that was interesting. But anyway, it was great there. We had amazing weather, we had great food. Of course, Tuscany does go together with great food and excellent wine from one of the world's best wine areas. Other than that, what am I up to? I'm getting ready for this weekend's studio photography workshop that we will hold here at the Viewfinder Villa, here in right outside Hanover. The significant portion of that will be learning about light and how light works, how to harness and how to control it to help you tell your story. And light is maybe, I would think, the most fundamental thing in photography. And that's why I'm looking really looking forward to this weekend, because these kind of workshops, I mean, as much as I can tell about this and teach about this, they're also always a bit of a refresher for myself, because then I will go back to the basics. The moment I have to explain these things, I will pretty much put myself in the shoes of a beginner, and that is so helpful to not to stay grounded. I need that. And so this week's workshop about small studio, about big studio with light formers and softboxes and snoots and reflectors and diffusers and whatnot. I mean, there's so much stuff that you can talk about, but of course it all is grounded in the light topic, in how to harness the light, and that's going to be cool. So looking forward to that. Anyway, today on the show, there are two major things. There's a question by John on the 50 millimeter focal length, and I like that question a lot, so looking forward to that. And there's a follow-up on episode 791, where Alan Attridge and I discussed photo attribution. And if you haven't listened to that, go back, listen to 791, so you know what the follow-up, how it nicely slots in, because we received a follow-up question from a listener that puts a whole new angle on the topic. And I didn't even think in that direction, but he asks, how about if you don't want attribution on one of your photos? That's going to be an interesting discussion between Alan and myself. But let's start with John.
Hey Chris, it's John Luna from San Diego. First off, I want to say thanks for always answering my questions, even though they suck sometimes. I have a couple questions that are kind of all very different and random. My 51.8 was my first lens 6 or 7 years ago, and back then I felt it was pretty gimmicky because I really just used it for bokeh. And now that I've grown as a photographer, it's kind of a better lens for me now because of its speed from shooting manual, I guess. And I really wanted to know about candid street photography and a situation where you would stop and capture something randomly rather than posing a person. In that situation, do you typically walk around at f4 or 5.6 to really get that environmental feel, and then you ride your shutter speed? Or do you find running and gunning at 1.8 gets you the most consistent results? My second question.
Okay, let me cut in right here before you ask the second question. Your questions, first of all, don't suck. Maybe my answers do sometimes. And so it's interesting how you approach the 51.8. As you say, you first saw it as a gimmick to throw the background out of focus, but now you like it better because of its speed and its its flexibility. And you're looking at candid street photography, and your question is how I deal with that. Well, first of all, let me briefly talk about the 50 millimeter in general, because I think it's one of the most undervalued lenses and underestimated lenses that there are. Simple as that. It is one of those must-have things, and 50 millimeter on a full frame body would be ideal because it's close to what we call the normal focal length. Even on a crop camera on APS-C, it's still in the range of being a really good lens. In Micro Four Thirds context, we're more looking at a 25 millimeter as the normal focal length. So that would be the equivalent there. The reasons are, well, first of all, these lenses are typically very affordable. The 51.8 by Canon is $100 and a few bucks, and that is for what you get from that lens. That is just amazing. It's a very bright lens. If you've been shooting with a kit lens or anything at f4 or lower, yeah, going f1.8 is going to give you so many more opportunities to get a photo because it is bright. It lets a lot of light in while wide open. And you can shoot without flash in most situations that you thought wouldn't be possible, especially combined with a more modern camera that has, that does ISO 1600 or higher without too much noise. So that's definitely a great thing. They're also optically very good. because they are built on simple proven lens designs. Those designs have been around for ages. I remember back in the 80s when you bought an SLR, a film SLR, that 50 millimeter lens would be on that camera. It was the kit lens. That was how ubiquitous is that a word? Anyway, how ever present they were. They are everywhere, and 50 millimeters have been around, and the designs haven't changed. Or not much, at least. So, I mean, the newer one, the 50 1.8 STM by Canon, for example, has a different focus motor, different the stepper motor in it that makes it a bit more suitable for video. But it's the same lens, it's the same glass in there as before. It hasn't changed. So that makes it easy for them to bring the price down, because it is. They don't have to do any major R&D on those. It's also a prime lens, which kind of forces you into the sneaker zoom thing. You can't just zoom in and out. So I consider that a bonus, because it forces you to be a bit more creative as a photographer. It furthers your creativity. But above all, it's what we call a normal lens. It's in the middle between wide angle and telephoto. And that means it doesn't exaggerate the proportions in your photo like wide angle does. Wide angle exaggerates what's in the front. You have to get closer to get the same size, but then things in the front are so much bigger than the things in the back of the photo. And that's just an exaggeration that is not what we see with our eyes. And the telephoto is the same. You get this, sometimes is, I think, falsely called depth compression, which it isn't really, but anyway, it doesn't matter, where things that are at very different distances from the camera look almost the same size. And that is the exaggeration that makes it easy to get a photo that has something special. Now, the 50 doesn't have that. The normal focal length doesn't have that. It forces you to work on your composition. It forces you, in order to wow someone with a photo, you'll have to be a better photographer. You can't just rely on an inherent property of your lens. So the 50, belongs in every camera bag. Let's not say the 50, the normal focal length, which is, again, depends on the size of the sensor. And by the way, that's one of the things I write about in the wide angle book, which is not yet out, but we're working on it. So let's see. So yeah, your question. How I go about street photography with this lens. You ask if I shoot at a fixed aperture in a street context, and or if I shoot it wide open all the time at f1.8. Well, let's answer the general question here first. Why do people shoot their 50 1.8 at 1.8? Now, of course, what I hear all the time is, hey, I paid for it, so I'll use it. Of course, yep, you can do this. And the reason why it works so well, the reason why people love it so much is because it gives you separation from the background. It gives your subject separation from the background. And that means it'll make for better photos. In general, photos where the subject is separate from the background, and there are many ways to do that, to separate the subject from the background, but one is throwing the background out of focus. It's just one of many, but with the 1.8, 50 1.8, that's easy to do. So it's really clear now what the subject is and what the background is. So that makes it work better in general. The shallow depth of field achieves that. But unfortunately, one of the things that I don't like about shooting wide open all the time is you lose context. Because we will just turn the background into mush. The background was going to be just this blurry mess. And I love context in my photos. I love to be able to see where this photo was taken, in what circumstances it was taken. So my answer to that question is I rarely shoot the 50 millimeter 1.8 at its widest open aperture of 1.8. My photos need context. So I will often shoot that lens at an f4 or f5.6, because it will still give me, and I'm speaking from a full frame perspective here, but this will mostly work on a IPS-C sensor, on a crop sensor as well, because those apertures will give me some out of focus background still, but not too much, so it's visible where this photo's been taken, and that still helps me separate the foreground from the background. It still lets enough light in, and especially with sensors these days that are so good. So that works for me. Stopping that lens down also helps me with focus, because I get a bit more depth of field. It's not just this thin sliver of focus, but it's more like a couple of feet of focus at a certain distance. And then I will typically in the street context have that lens pre-focused at a certain distance. Let's say like 6 feet maybe. And then I know at this aperture and that distance, my depth of field will be this large. So I know that if my subject is within that distance, then it'll be in focus. And yeah, I'll have my subject in focus without having to rely on the camera to choose the right focus point, which it will get wrong sometimes. I also don't write the shutter speed then, because I will try to shoot these things in manual. But that's a preference. I mean, it works best on overcast days and in the shade, where the light doesn't change too much, and then you set you set your exposure and then just leave it there. But that's a trial and error thing if you get started with it. And yeah, if you haven't learned doing manual exposure, then that might not be the way for you to go. In case of doubt, set the camera to aperture priority and then shoot away.
Consistent results. My second question is, and I think you're going to tell me to go out and shoot, but another hobby of mine is reading. I listened to your episode with David Duchemin and was surprised that there are authors out there who I can still grow from. And I was wondering if you or the community have any other photography book recommendations for the moderate to advanced hobbyist. My recommendation is Michael Freeman. Look forward to your wide angle book. Hope you do sign copies for the first 100 buyers or something like that. Sorry for the long.
That's where it cuts off. I guess you used the SpeakPipe widget on the tipsfromthetopfloor.com website, and that has a time limit on it, but I think you get your point through. So your second question is reading material. Where to go, what to read, and okay, as you anticipated, my answer is, of course, go out and shoot, but let me see if I can put this in a frame of some sort. The wide-angle book, thanks for asking, is coming along nicely. We've just started the layout phase now for the German edition, and if I had to guess, I'd say it'll be out in Germany well before the holidays. And then after that, we'll go into the translation phase for the English version. I don't have a date for that yet, but that's about the progress that we have on that one. Answering your question, there's a lot of good stuff out there. And the answer really depends on what area you're interested in. I don't know all the photography books out there, I have to say that. So I won't. It's like the question for what lens should I buy? It's impossible to answer. But it really depends on what area you're interested in. What is it? You might want to do, I don't know, you might want to further your artistic side in photography. There's books for that. Or maybe you want to become a better in image editing, or you want to improve on certain techniques, or become better in a specific genre, like, I don't know, landscape photography or architecture or portraiture, which makes it really, really hard to give an all-purpose recommendation. So, of course, my answer has to be look at good photography. Absolutely, look at good photography and then go out and shoot. Shoot lots. And then work it out from looking at photos of other people. Get some great coffee table books with photography in them. They don't really have to be like the teaching kind of books. It can be really books where someone shows off their photography. There's great stuff out there. I love the latest Magnum, big Magnum book with tons of good photography in there. And then try to reverse engineer what you see in those photos. I mean, you will learn from that. What focal length did the photographer use, or where did the light come from? How did they place the subject? And so on and so forth. I would recommend to rummage through some photo book publishers' portfolios. Rocky Nook is my top recommendation because that's the same people that published our our film photography handbook. And I really like their choice of topics and their selection there and the selection of authors. So rockynook.com, ROCKYNOOK.com would be my main recommendation. Go through their sections, and I've yet to come across a bad photo book by them. Hey, we have no sponsor on this week's episode to help us keep the lights on here, so I'll just use this section to thank everyone for their help and contributions. That's you out there. And there are so many different ways to help me produce a new episode of Tips from the Top Floor every week. You could leave a rating or a review on iTunes. That's a great way to point new listeners this way. Or you could simply help spread the word by writing about the show on your social media or on your blog, or talk about it on your podcast. Or you could, of course, support the show with a donation or with a regular contribution on Patreon. Starts at $1 per episode, and that'll give you early access to the episodes. Whichever way you choose to support the show, be it by word of mouth or by financial contribution, you're making a difference, and I'm really thankful for that. And you can find out more about how to support the show at tfttf.com/support. Thank you so much. Now, guess who I have on the other side of this line? It's the same person that I already talked to about attribution, the one who brought it up. Alan, how are you doing?
You can call me Marty.
I should do that from now on. People have no idea what we're talking about, but we'll find out in a minute. I've received a call from Robert, who is, who has an additional question regarding
A follow-up
regarding attribution, which we talked about in one of the last episodes, and I thought I'd bring you back on for your valued opinion on this show, and let's hear what Robert has to ask.
Hi, Chris. Robert O'Neill from San Diego, Cal. Well, love your show. And way of thinking of things. And on a recent show, you and Marty talked about attribution. I have the standard problem of not getting credit where credit is due, but a different problem is also that people giving credit where you don't want it. What I mean is, if I give them a WebRes photo, and they apply some gaudy filter to it, then give me credit. I typically avoid confronting them unless it's really bad. What are your thoughts? Thanks, Chris. Great show.
So, Marty, Alan.
Yes.
So have you ever been in that situation that you had some photos of yours with someone else and they were doing some really ghastly things to them and then put your name under it?
To the best of my knowledge, that has never happened to me.
Okay.
However, without any, I'm sure they're out there. It could be. I mean, I deliver photos to clients all the time, but I've never come across that. However, the co-host of my show, Adam Schwartz, has dealt with this.
Okay.
And with his own wife.
Well, tell me what happened.
Well, he takes pictures, as you know, we all do, and he's very, very proud of how he chooses to edit and process and develop, or whatever you want to call the post-processing. So he likes the finished product as is, and he'll often hand it off to his wife, and she'll want to post it on her social media. And one time, and one time only, she added a filter.
She added a filter.
She added a filter on one of the, I'm going to say Instagram.
Well, it's like all these different photo platforms have some filters built in. If you put them on Google Photos or something, you have buttons and can choose from different filters. I think that's a standard nowadays. Filters that make the photos look, I don't know, like an old photo, or that will do something weird to the colors or to the contrasts and so on.
which neither of us are against. I fully embrace. Have fun with it. However, Adam had gone to all the trouble to get the photo to look just right, and she kind of undid all that because she thought it looked better in some sort of a filter.
Where's that? Are they still together?
They're still together. Well, yeah, he hit the roof actually.
Okay.
And he basically told her to quit doing that.
Okay.
And she did. She's not done it since.
All right. So why? Okay. So I think one of the reasons that might be a problem for a photographer is that we who have those big boxes with the many megapixel and so on, just look at photos in a different way than most lay people do. Most people who are just like every now and then point and shooters. And if you look in the different discussion forums, there are certain things that are kind of no-nos, and in some areas those filters are kind of no-nos, and photographers do take a lot of pride to take photos and then work on them to make them look exactly the way they want. I mean, nowadays when you open Lightroom and open a photo in Lightroom, there's so much stuff you can tweak. And then you will tweak it so that it looks like that it looks natural, for example, and that it looks very the way it's meant to look, and then someone else has a different idea about that.
And are we right?
Yeah, that's the question. That is a serious question. I think it's like a wine connoisseur, you know. So when I had my first glass of red wine ever, it was just like, wine, okay, that's what wine tastes like, but I didn't have an idea what good wine tastes like, and over the years that just has changed. And I think with photography it's the same, but that doesn't really mean that anyone is more right than someone else. A friend of mine who is an artist in his own right, but he works with furniture. He's wonderful when he makes furniture. Great stuff he does. And he got into photography, and he bought a DSLR, and then started very, from my point of view, very naively, like kind of like pulling those sliders in Lightroom, and this looks interesting. Oh, that looks interesting, and he came up with stuff that I would never have come up with, and that I looked at and was like, holy cow, what just happened there? And then he did an exhibition, and he started selling that stuff. And I wouldn't have had the idea of doing to the pictures what he did.
That's kind of part of the art of it.
Isn't it?
You do, you do what you think is right, or what you. I don't generally. I think when I take photos and how I frame them, how I process them, everything start to finish, I don't generally think about, hey, what are other people going to like? I think about, well, this is what I like. This is what's in my head. This is what's right, because I'm always right. And even though, only in my head, I understand. So I don't necessarily think of, oh, okay, well, everybody likes the color red, so we're going to, I'm going to make sure it's red. It's not a bad way of thinking, though, if you want people to come to your installation. Was it installation or a gallery? What was he doing?
No, it was an exhibition. Photos on the
exhibition.
Wall. Yeah.
So if you want people to come to your exhibition, perhaps you should think that way. But in terms of taking somebody, if someone delivers their photo to you, so I agree with Robert that it's definitely uncool to take someone else's photo that has been processed.
Well, I think the question is also how it has been processed, because many, in air quotes, serious photographers kind of look down on those filters that do something to the photo with one click, and that is not just, there isn't enough effort in it, there is no skill in it.
Oh, that's snobby, though.
That is very snobby, yeah. But a lot of photographers are that way. And I think the question that Robert has is how do we deal with that? For me personally, I will typically tell the client that I will deliver the photos in an edited form that I did edit, and if they want to do further edits, they have to go through me. And in some cases, I've even put that in a contract. In a
that seems
form.
Reasonable.
And then that is clear game. If in other cases, I've worked for clients where they then took that photo or some of the photos and gave them to a graphic designer who then made them into something different entirely, like completely swapped out the background, make the photo black and white, and made it into something completely new, and that was cool as well. I like that, but that's only because I liked what they did to the photo, and they could have they could have just messed it up as well, but it worked in that context. But again, they were not just like pressing a button to apply a filter. They were putting some skillful work in it. And I think that's one of the things that that the more snobby photographers get hung up on.
But it sounds like Robert delivered a photo that he was proud of, and somebody took it and ruined it. That's my guess. And now he doesn't want...
I think so too, yeah.
He doesn't want to have his name on something that's crappy, which I can understand that. Although I've never had this happen online, for a long time, whenever I would, deliver photos to a client, any client, it didn't matter, the clients that were going to get prints made. For example, if I've shot the occasional wedding, I'm not a wedding photographer, but I have shot a few weddings here and there. And so when my clients would say, hey, how do we do this? Do I get the pictures? Do you get the prints? Do I have to order prints?
Do I get the raw files?
Well, no one ever really asked me that.
Oh, okay. I got that question before, yeah.
Yeah, no, that comes up, but I generally discourage that and say you don't want the raw files. Or if you do, I'll just deliver the raw files and I won't bother editing them at all. Mm-hmm. You can go nuts. That's fine. But generally, what they ask for hey, how do we do it? Do we order the prints from you? Which a lot of photographers do. And I always said I don't want to be in that business. Like that seems like an awful lot of legwork, keeping up with orders and deliveries and billing and how does this all go in this piecemeal thing. I'm kind of an Occam's razor kind of guy, where just give me a lump sum, and then you can have all the images. I'll go through them.
All the images that you selected.
Right.
Or that you selected and edited.
Say I'll shoot 500 and deliver 150 that I pick, and I've cropped them.
Do you agree on a number of photos that you will deliver?
Not really.
Will you tell them you will get at least 30 good ones?
I definitely would guarantee them that.
So you will at least set some expectation, because otherwise, that's another question completely off the topic here. But another question that I've received is, after delivering a selection, what's with the rest of the photos?
Yeah, they're not good.
The other 2,000.
Right. You don't want those.
No, of course not.
You don't. And I generally explain this to potential clients that, look, I'm doing you a favor. By me editing out those other 1,900 photos,
of course.
Although 30 photos out of 2,000, you got to get that ratio down. But by taking the time, I'm saving you an awful lot of your time.
Yeah.
By getting rid of those. So just take these. You don't need pictures of everything.
But that's a good way to tell a customer without making them feel bad about it.
Sure. I give the clients their pictures. I say, here's, let's say 150, and I say, here's the full res JPEG files. So you can take it and get all your prints made. You want blow-ups, you want to make a book. I don't care. I don't want to be in that back-end business. I'm not set up for that. It's too much. It's too much work and very little return on investment for me. And I find that clients like it. They like the freedom and flexibility of saying, well, I like this photo. I'm going to get 10 printed, and otherwise it might cost an additional, I don't know, 250 euros or something like that. They kind of don't want to do that. So they don't mind spending a little more up front and making that happen. However, what I used to tell them, I would give them a list of a couple of reputable printing houses and say, look, you can do what you want. Please don't go to Costco. Mm-hmm. I know they're...
So you're pushing them the right direction. You're nudging them the right way.
I'm not putting it in the contract because I don't do contracts. Everything's a handshake. But I just say, look, you're going to get better results if you go to, A, B, or C. Ironically, one of them was ABC, first in the phone book, for real. But there's a few places here you go. Now, there's places they'll do it for 5 cents a print. You'll be disappointed, and I'll be disappointed for you. So you'll have paid me, whatever you pay me, a few thousand euros or whatever the job is, and then have a horrible product. Well, don't do that. And then over time, I found that the quality control of some places got better. Some of the cheaper places got better, and some of the other places got kind of, people just stopped caring, like the people who worked there. And so it's hit or miss.
I've seen that too, yeah.
And so it's hit or miss. I mean, you can go out and get good prints at some places sometimes, and then, so I kind of stopped worrying about it. I tell people, you know what, don't cheap out on the prints, but in the end, I find that now, and Robert obviously finds this as well, I'm guessing, with the internet and so many variables, you can't control all of it.
But then back to the main question that Robert had is, how would you deal with someone doing something horrible to your photo and then putting your name under it? Would you go tell them,
No.
Could you please take my name off?
I would move on with my life.
Me too.
And
that was exactly my answer. And
I would basically, I treat it like the ocean. The ocean is mostly water and a little bit of salt. And if you keep pumping out more water, more of the good stuff, then yeah, there's going to be some salt in there. Don't worry about it. So just go out there and for every photo that you get credited, wrongfully credited, go out and put 100 Rembrandts out there instead, and keep that ratio up, and that's the best you can hope for.
That's awesome. I have nothing to add to that. That is a perfect way to wrap up this segment. Alan, thank you so much. This was Alan Attridge from the Two Hosers podcast. And if you have more interesting questions about attribution, hey, bring them on. We're happy to talk more about this. Thanks, Alan.
Thank you.
And that was it for this episode. Thanks again, everyone who listened to this, who downloaded it. If you subscribe, this is even better, because sometimes sponsors want to see subscriber numbers, and that is an interesting measure for them. So if you've not subscribed in your podcast client, you'll find it wherever you find your other podcasts. Thanks also again, everyone who participated in the last Slack challenge. I will review that in the next week's episode. There's a new Slack challenge up there now. Matt has uploaded something. It's the November 27 challenge. You just have to join the according channel. Matt has selected bokeh for the topic, and if you want to participate on the TFTTF Slack, go to tfttf.com/yslack, WHYSLACK. If you want to send in a question for the show like John did earlier, just speak it into the voice memo app of your choice and send it to voice@tfttf.com. That's voice@tfttf.com. I make you understand that I'm still your man. And of course, thanks again to all you amazing supporters on Patreon. Your voluntary support starts at $1 per episode, and you'll get early access to the episodes while you help keeping the lights on here on the top floor. And for other ways to support the show, go to tfttf.com/support. Music for the show by Jeff Smith, silent partner and Hans-Peter Kugrid, publishing by Release Pixie, Matt Ressiter Armstead, Slack invitations by CIO Russ. And again, if you want to join the discussion or participate in the new Slack challenge, go to tfttf.com/yslack, WHYSLACK. My name is Chris Marquardt. Follow me on Facebook and on Twitter at Chris Marquardt, Chris MARQUARDT. I remember that I told you there'd be sunshine. And of course, go out and take amazing photos. Don't forget to be nice to each other. And happy shooting.